Today we're diving into something a little different.
Oh,
The Book of Witches.
okay.
And this was published back in 1908.
Right.
And you might think, oh, this is just about, dusty old superstitions.
Right.
But the author, Oliver Madox Hueffer, actually argues that witchcraft is alive and well
Wow.
and might even be making a comeback.
Interesting.
Yeah. So what I think is so fascinating about this book is that Hueffer doesn't approach witchcraft as, like some sensationalist topic.
Right.
Like he's not trying to, scare you or titillate you with spooky stories.
I see.
He's really more interested in exploring
Yeah.
this enduring power of the idea itself.
Yeah, and what makes it really intriguing is that he doesn't shy away from challenging
Right.
those sort of conventional wisdoms.
Exactly. Right off the bat,
Yeah.
he points out this really interesting contrast.
Okay.
He says, while the educated folks might scoff at the idea of witches, you head out to the countryside and you'll find a very different story.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's this clash between what we might call official knowledge
Right.
and folk beliefs.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and it's
Even in London,
yeah.
at the turn of the 20th century, you had fortune tellers
Totally.
and these self-proclaimed professors
Yeah.
who were essentially tapping into that same
Right.
desire for insight into the unknown.
It's like that desire to understand,
Wow.
to control what we can't fully grasp.
Right.
Like it transcends time and place.
For sure. Yeah.
But Hueffer doesn't just dwell on the past.
Yeah.
He brings it right into his present day
Okay.
with some pretty compelling examples.
Oh, really? Like what?
Well, he talks about a
Yeah.
princess sticking pins in a wax figure of her husband,
Oh, wow.
which sounds an awful lot like a modern-day voodoo doll,
It does.
wouldn't you say?
Yeah, absolutely.
And then there's that 1907 court case where a man claims his wife bewitched him.
Oh, wow.
So clearly the belief in witchcraft wasn't just some harmless folklore.
Yeah.
It had
Real world consequences.
real-world consequences.
So then the question becomes, why does this seemingly outdated belief
Right.
still hold such sway over people,
Yeah.
even in supposedly modern times?
Well, Hueffer suggests that maybe a little superstition isn't inherently bad.
Okay.
He argues that while science has its merits,
Uh-huh.
it can also kind of strip away some of the mystery and wonder
Right.
from life.
I see.
Witches, on the other hand, offer an alternative,
Okay.
a way to kind of grapple with the unexplainable.
So it's this idea that he's not necessarily advocating for blind faith,
Right.
but he's highlighting a fundamental human need
Right.
to find meaning,
Exactly.
to make sense of the world,
Yeah.
even if those explanations don't always align
Yeah.
with scientific reasoning.
Okay, so he's acknowledging that pull towards the mystical, but does he actually believe in witches himself?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
That's where it gets nuanced.
Okay.
He points out that many things attributed to witchcraft in the past
Yeah.
are now achieved through science.
Okay.
So, for example, witches were said to fly on broomsticks.
Right.
And now we have airplanes.
Right.
They supposedly cured diseases with charms and potions.
Uh-huh.
Now we have doctors and modern medicine.
So he's kind of suggesting that the line between magic
Yeah.
and science isn't always so clear-cut.
Totally.
Like what was once seen as supernatural
Uh-huh.
might simply be a reflection of knowledge we hadn't yet acquired.
Exactly.
Okay.
And this leads him to make a really intriguing argument.
Right.
He suggests that the perceived resurgence of witchcraft in his time
Yeah.
could be a reaction to the West's increasing reliance
Okay.
on rationality and science.
So instead of viewing witchcraft as like a relic of the past, he's framing it as a potential counterforce,
Yeah.
a way of reclaiming a sense of wonder and mystery
Right.
in a world that's becoming increasingly disenchanted.
Exactly.
Wow.
And he doesn't just speculate about this.
Okay.
He backs up his argument with a global survey of witchcraft practices
Great.
from India to Africa to America,
Wow.
highlighting the fact that the idea of witches
Uh-huh.
fills a need across cultures,
Right.
especially where traditional religions
Right.
might leave some things unexplained.
It's like they provide a framework,
Right.
a language
Yeah.
for understanding the forces at play in the universe
Exactly.
that might not always be quantifiable
Right.
or easily explained by science.
Right. And to illustrate this point,
Yeah.
Hueffer shares some fascinating personal anecdotes about his own encounters.
Oh, I like where this is going.
With supposed witches.
And these encounters are where the book really comes alive, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
They provide a glimpse into like the lived experience of belief.
Right.
The way it shapes people's perceptions and actions.
Yeah.
And they range from the seemingly mundane to the truly mysterious.
I can't wait to hear about this.
Yeah.
Okay.
He starts with this woman named Amelia.
Okay.
A Tuscan witch, who apparently cured a girl's bewitchment.
Oh, wow.
And the whole encounter, as Hueffer describes it, is surprisingly matter of fact.
It's like for those villagers, consulting a witch was as normal as, say, visiting the local doctor.
Exactly.
It wasn't seen as something like outlandish or spooky.
Right.
Just a part of their everyday reality.
It highlights how belief systems can be so deeply embedded in a culture.
Right.
That they become almost invisible.
Yeah.
As part of the fabric of life.
Then there's the story of the Carolina conjure woman.
Oh, yeah.
This like enigmatic figure shrouded in mystery.
Right.
Hueffer doesn't even know for sure if she was actually performing any magic. But the belief in her powers, the respect she commanded from her community, it's palpable.
Yeah, it speaks to that enduring power of the unknown.
Right.
The way it can inspire both awe and fear.
Totally.
And it also raises those interesting questions about the role of like tradition and oral history in shaping those beliefs.
It makes you wonder, what did she represent to those who sought her out?
Right.
What kind of knowledge or wisdom did they believe she possessed?
And finally, we have Hueffer's encounter with Madame Fatima.
Okay.
The London fortune teller.
Right.
Who gives him a rather grim.
Oh, no.
And let's be honest, sort of hilarious prediction about his future.
Yeah, it's easy to dismiss her as like a charlatan preying on people's gullibility.
Right.
But I found myself thinking, even if her methods were questionable, she was still tapping into that universal desire to know what the future holds, to gain some sense of control over the unpredictable nature of life.
It's a reminder that even in a supposedly rational
scientific age, that longing for certainty, for reassurance, it persists.
It does.
And it often finds expression in these unexpected ways.
I think these personal stories really bring Hueffer's arguments to life, don't they?
They do. They show how belief in witchcraft isn't just some abstract concept.
Right.
It's something that plays out in real people's lives,
Yeah.
shaping their experiences and their worldviews.
Absolutely. And they also serve to underscore one of Hueffer's most compelling arguments.
Which is?
That this potential resurgence of witchcraft in the early 20th century wasn't just some isolated phenomenon.
Right.
It was connected to some pretty major global shifts happening at the time.
Like what?
Well, you're referring to like that period of rapid technological advancement?
Yes.
The rise of industrialization and also the growing tension between the East and the West.
Exactly. Remember, this is 1908.
Yeah.
The world is on the cusp of massive change.
Right.
And Hueffer points to the Russo-Japanese War.
Where an Eastern power, Japan, decisively defeated a Western power, Russia, as a symbolic victory of what he calls the magical East over the scientific West.
That's a fascinating way to frame it.
It is, isn't it?
Yeah, it suggests that the West, with its emphasis on like rationality and empirical evidence, might be losing its grip on global dominance, and that these older, more mystical ways of thinking might be gaining traction.
Exactly. And Hueffer sees this playing out, not just on the international stage, but also within individual societies. Even in England, a place where belief in witches is supposedly dying out. He finds evidence to the contrary.
Really?
He talks about how his own servants were taken in by a fortune teller.
Oh, wow.
Who ended up swindling them out of their money.
It seems that no matter how much we try to explain away the supernatural, there's a part of us that's still drawn to it, that still yearns for something beyond the purely rational.
Precisely. And Hueffer doesn't shy away from exploring the potential dangers of this yearning. He acknowledges the darker side of witchcraft, the potential for exploitation and harm. He talks about the historical persecution of witches. The violence and fear that often surrounded those accused of practicing magic.
It's a sobering reminder that belief, no matter how sincerely held, can be used for both good and ill.
Exactly. But what's so compelling about Hueffer's work is that he doesn't let those negative aspects overshadow
Okay.
his central argument.
Right.
He insists that the underlying human need that witchcraft addresses, that need for wonder, for explanation, for a sense of agency in a world that can often feel chaotic and unpredictable, that need is something worth understanding, even celebrate.
And that's where his exploration of contemporary witchcraft practices from around the world becomes so illuminating.
He talks about the persistence of traditional magic and witchcraft in India, even under British colonial rule.
Wow.
He describes the role of witch doctors in African societies, acting as intermediaries between the spirit world and the human world, healers and guides within their communities.
And he even finds evidence of witchcraft practices in America.
He does.
Particularly within African-American communities, where traditions like voodoo brought over from the West Indies continued to thrive.
What's so striking about Hueffer's approach is that he doesn't present these diverse practices as mere curiosities or anthropological oddities. He sees them as expressions of a universal human impulse. A way of engaging with the mysteries of life, of seeking answers to questions that science alone may not be able to provide.
It's like he's saying that the witch throughout history has represented a kind of rebellious spirit, a refusal to be completely bound by the limitations
of the material world.
And that this rebellious spirit, this yearning for something more, something magical, it transcends cultures and time periods. It's a fundamental part of what it means to be human.
Okay, so after diving into the Book of Witches.
And
exploring all these different facets of witchcraft. What's the main takeaway for our listener?
That's the question, isn't it?
Yeah. Should we all be dusting off our broomsticks and brewing up some potions?
Well, I think, Hueffer's point is less about advocating for a literal return to witchcraft and more about encouraging us to examine what this enduring fascination reveals about ourselves, about like our deepest human needs and desires.
It's like he's saying, look, whether or not witches actually exist is almost beside the point. What matters is that the idea of them, the stories we tell about them speak to something profound within us.
Exactly. And that something might be different,
For each of us. For some, it might be that yearning for a sense of wonder, for mystery, in a world that often feels overly explained. For others, it might be a desire for connection to something larger than themselves, a spiritual longing that traditional religion doesn't quite satisfy.
One of the things that struck me most about Hueffer's book was the way he connects this potential resurgence of witchcraft to these anxieties about modernity, about the rapid pace of technological advancement and the perceived loss of a more enchanted way of seeing the world.
It's a theme that resonates even more strongly today, wouldn't you say?
I think so.
I mean, we're surrounded by technology, bombarded with information. And yet so many of us still feel this sense of emptiness, this longing for something more.
It makes you wonder if in our quest to conquer the unknown, to rationalize and quantify every aspect of existence,
we've lost touch with something essential. Something magical that gives life meaning and purpose.
And maybe that's where the figure of the witch, as Hueffer presents her, becomes so compelling. She represents a kind of resistance. This refusal to be completely bound by the limitations of the material world. A willingness to embrace the mysterious and the unexplainable.
So the next time someone dismisses witchcraft as mere superstition, maybe we shouldn't be so quick to agree.
Maybe not. Maybe, as Hueffer suggests, there's a deeper truth hidden beneath those seemingly outlandish beliefs. A truth about our own enduring need for enchantment. That sense of wonder and mystery. Even in a world that often tries to convince us that such things are childish or irrational.
It's a beautiful thought, isn't it?
It is.
That even in our hyper-rational, technology-driven age, there's still room for a little magic. And perhaps by acknowledging that need, by making space for the unexplainable, we can rediscover a sense of connection, not only to the world around us, but to something deeper within ourselves.
Well, I think that's a great place to leave it for today.
I agree.
Thanks for joining me on this deep dive into the Book of Witches.
It's been a pleasure.
And until next time, keep seeking out those little sparks of magic.
I will.